If you're struggling to stay motivated, chances are you're not lazy. You're just chasing goals that don't fit anymore. In this video, I want to share with you a framework which will help you reset your direction, rebuild momentum, and realign with goals that actually feel like yours. It's a coaching model called the GROW model, which stands for goals, reality, opportunity, and will. And when you really lean into this simple 4-step process, it gets you from stuck to vividly clear. The very first part of the process is going to be picking some goals. And straight from the offset, this feels like the easiest part of the process. But it's actually one where most people fail. And because they're failing right at the first hurdle, even if they were to go through the rest of the process, it's not going to work. Case in point, most people watching this video will probably have a goal of earning more money. And on the outset, that makes sense, because having more money and having more disposable income will allow you to build a life that you maybe currently don't already have, through the likes of vacations, nice cars, and maybe even a new home. But even if we just take that car example for a minute, yes, there's going to be excitement in the lead up to actually putting the order down and picking up this new vehicle. But jump forward 6 months' time and all of a sudden that just becomes run-of-the-mill. The novelty has wore off, you're back into day-to-day life, and because you've not done anything to tackle the problems in the rest of your life and the pain that comes with that, very, very quickly you're going to just end up being in this situation where yes, you have this new vehicle, but nothing else in your life has changed, and so it doesn't feel like you've made any forward progress. Instead, what you should do is actually go a level deeper. Rather than thinking about the things that you want and maybe what goals you should set to achieve those, think about what life you would love to design for yourself if money and time and energy were no option. What do you want your days and weeks to look like, and what kind of people do you want to be around you? When you look at this problem through this lens, it actually gives you a very, very different answer. And so when you're setting your goals, make sure that you're not just looking at the surface level, but you're thinking about what that ideal life would look like. And while you shouldn't rush through any of the steps in this framework, spending an extra bit of time on this goal section will absolutely pay dividends because it forms the foundation of everything else. If you get this right, everything else will just be so much easier. The second part of the process is actually trying to figure out where we are right now. Yes, in the goal section, we pick that destination that we can put into our GPS, but like any GPS, unless we give it a starting point, it's never going to be able to form a path from one point to the other. So by spending a little bit of time asking ourselves where we're doing really, really well and maybe where we're lagging behind, we're starting to paint that picture. And what we're ultimately trying to do with this process is trying to paint a picture of all the skill set that you currently have and which ones are really, really strong compared to the goals that you've set, and maybe which other ones are lagging behind. The unfortunate reality is that most people will naturally gravitate to where they're already doing really well. We've already got some really solid skills here, and so we know what questions to ask and we know where to go to get the answers. But the problem with that is that we've only got marginal gains left. We've already squeezed a huge amount of the juice out of this lemon, and so getting anything else, we need to put in a lot of effort to even move the needle slightly forward. If instead we focus over here where we're maybe not doing so well, yes, that's a little bit scary and daunting because we don't know where to start and we don't know what questions to ask. But because there's so much progress available to us, we can make significant strides forward really, really quickly. And so when we pair that with the pain that this gap is currently causing, we can actually resolve a lot of those problems so super fast that we make so much more progress, build so much more momentum, so much quicker. So this section of the process is absolutely focused on where we are now, but because ultimately what we're trying to do is figure out where we're doing well so we can avoid it, knowing that by focusing in the areas where we're lagging behind, we'll have so much more of a positive impact. Before we move on, if you would like to take this further, I've actually got an email newsletter which will walk you through this entire process. For the first 28 days of you signing up, I'll send you a daily email with guidance, steps, and actions that you can take every single day to get you right from start to finish. Of course, it's totally free and you can unsubscribe anytime you want. But if that sounds like something that might be helpful, I'll leave a link down in the description below. Okay, we're really starting to build momentum here and we're already into the third step of the framework. Because we've spent so much time and energy looking at our goals and our reality in a different lens than maybe we have before, we've set the foundation, the start point and the destination of where we want to go super, super clearly. And so now all we need to do is brainstorm ideas on what we can do to try and close that gap out. So for this part of the process, get yourself into somewhere quiet where you're not going to be disturbed and just start brainstorming ideas. As always with brainstorming, there's no such thing as a bad idea, and really promote and try and drive out of the box thinking. If you're struggling to come up for ideas, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe you're just a lot closer to where you should be going than you thought you were, and so maybe those goals are appropriate. But I would really recommend that you spend a bit of time really trying to get some new ideas out on paper so that you can see if they'd work or not. And don't be afraid to use modern tools like ChatGPT or other AI platforms to come up with some ideas for you. As always with AI, just take what it says with a little bit of grain of salt. It could be right on the money, but it might be wrong too. And how I use ChatGPT in this context is just to prompt new ideas coming to my head. I don't want it to do the thinking for me, but I absolutely can use it to try and remove barriers in my thinking that I'm blind to right now. Okay, we're into the last step of the framework, and this is something that I very rarely see anybody do, regardless of whether they've used the GROW model or not. This section is the will section, and essentially what we want to do is set up systems around our life so that we can hold ourselves accountable to actually carrying out the actions that we came up with in the last section. And where it's so obvious that this usually falls down is just think about your New Year's resolutions. Chances are by the time you get to the end of January, you've probably forgotten them, and if you haven't, you've definitely fallen a little bit behind where you thought you would be. And that's because we don't develop the systems around the goals that we set. And that's exactly what this part of the process aims to solve. Now that you've got these list of options that are hopefully going to bring your reality point closer to that goal point, all you need to do is come up with systems around each of them which will allow you to just stay on track. The important thing to note with this is that there's no one real method that will work for everybody. But what I do is I actually implement a weekly review to keep track of where I am currently versus these goals and targets that I've set at the start of the process. At the end of each week, I will review a file that I call the macro file, which just outlines for every single week of each quarter where I should be and what actions I should be taking. This allows me every week to assess whether I'm on track or not, but more importantly set actions for the next week to make sure that either I stay on track or get back to where I need to be. And if this sounds like something you'd like a lot more detail on, I actually created a video documenting my entire weekly review process, which I'll link up here. If there's one takeaway I'd love everybody to bring with them after watching this video today, it's to keep in mind and remember that motivation isn't about forcing yourself or pushing harder. It's about having those honest conversations about what your life needs to have for you to be happy. When your goals match who you truly are, that energy and drive that you're missing right now just naturally comes back. If you found this video useful, something that would be super helpful would be to like this video and leave a comment down below. It really helps significantly more than you would believe, and I would really appreciate it. But with that said, that's this week's video, and I will talk to you in the next one. Peace!